I learned that I was going to be a dad in Mogadishu, Somalia, serving with the Army Rangers during Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
Yeah, I married my high school sweetheart. We had been married for about 3 years, had been trying to have a baby the whole time, and I was a sergeant in the Army in the Ranger Regiment the whole time that we were married. I got a letter in the mail while I was in Somalia, and the mail was kind of messed up. So letter number 2 came in the mail before letter number 1 showed up. Letter number 1 said that she was pregnant. I didn't get that letter. I got letter number 2 that said when the baby shows up, and I literally dropped the letter in on the floor and thought, what on earth is this? Is she saying that we're going to have a baby? It caught me that far off guard.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Jeff Struecker. Jeff is a retired Army Ranger who received the Silver Star for his actions in the Battle of Mogadishu 28 years ago today. He would go on to continue to serve in both Iraq and Afghanistan, multiple tours, reaching the rank of Major. He also became a chaplain, and after retiring from the Army, he became the pastor of Calvary Baptist Church in Georgia. He is a man of faith and a warrior. It's a big honor to have him on the podcast today, so get down there, smack the subscribe button, tap that like, and let's jump into it right now with Jeff Struecker on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Jeff Struecker. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Great to be with you.
All right, let's start right here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
5 children. Our oldest is 27 and the youngest is 19.
Wow, very cool. What kind of sports or activities were they all into growing up?
They did a whole range of things. With that many children, they did football and track, some music, so flute and piano, you name it. They did the range of things.
Very cool. Yeah, I got 4 kids myself. We got 3 boys and then the girl on the 4th try. If not, I'd have 5 right along with you there. But we got her on 4. If you could, Jeff, please just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Yeah, I spent most of my career in the United States Army, retired from there a few years ago, and just started a church. I pastor a church in Columbus, Georgia.
Yeah, and thank you for your service, Jeff. And if you could, take me back to the beginning of your fatherhood journey then. I would imagine you're still serving there at the time. About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Yeah. Well, the second question is easy to answer. It changed almost everything, just changed it in little increments, but over time, almost everything about the way that I viewed the world changed. I learned that I was going to be a dad in Mogadishu, Somalia, serving with the Army Rangers during Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
Yeah, I married my high school sweetheart. We had been married for about 3 years, had been trying to have a baby the whole time, and I was a sergeant in the Army in the Ranger Regiment the whole time that we were married. I got a letter in the mail while I was in Somalia, and the mail was kind of messed up. So letter number 2 came in the mail before letter number 1 showed up. Letter number 1 said that she was pregnant. I didn't get that letter. I got letter number 2 that said when the baby shows up, and I literally dropped the letter on the floor and thought, what on earth is this? Is she saying that we're going to have a baby? It caught me that far off guard.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and just to give the listeners some background here, I had already been involved in combat in the invasion of Panama in 1989. I was a single guy then. I went to combat in Kuwait as part of Desert Storm in 91. I was a married guy then, and I married a good-looking woman, so I thought to myself, if I get killed in combat, she's good-looking, she'll find somebody else, she'll be fine. But when I was in Somalia, I get this letter in the mail saying that we're going to have a baby, and that letter scared the daylights out of me because it caused me to start to say, wait a second, if I get killed in this combat tour, my child will never even know who their father is. And now I need to really think long and hard about what it is that I do for a living.
Yeah, and Jeff, that is one of the major reasons why I have so much respect for the men and women that do serve in the military. Is being a dad of 4 myself, I mean, I feel like I'm neglecting my kids when I'm away on an overnight shift at my job, and my life's not in danger while I'm doing it. So I can only imagine. And I know now you talk about getting the letter. Now we have at least FaceTime and all kind of different ways to communicate, which I would imagine. Did you find that? I know you served over there, during these past wars. Did you find it a little easier to communicate? Was it better? Did you were able to use the FaceTime and technology to communicate?
Yeah, I did many tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, and of course technology evolved, so I was able to stay in touch a lot more often. But there's something to be said about having to write letters back and forth because you only put what's really, really important in those letters just because of the amount of energy it takes. So yeah, sometimes having instant communication with a husband or a spouse or a parent that's in combat is it's convenient, but it's not always. It can also sometimes show you the bad parts of war that you really don't want to see when you're on the other side of the line.
Yeah, very well said. What would you consider to be the top values, Jeff, that you would hope to instill in all your kids growing up?
Yeah, for me, this was an easy question. I wanted them to first love Jesus. I wanted them, number two, to work really hard. And I wanted them to be a good man or a good woman. And by that, I mean, hold to your word, do the right thing. The whole goal was to just raise strong, independent people that would basically live out those three values.
Yeah, great stuff. And I know, I had former Navy SEAL Gunnar Hansen on the podcast. He went from SEAL to pastor. I know you went to chaplain to pastor. One of the things I would imagine that's got to conflict with being, a faith-based person has got to be that a commandment that says thou shalt not murder. How does that whole thing kind of play out when you're trying to talk to young guys that are faith-based, that are coming into the military? How do you kind of make them feel at ease about that, how it conflicts with their faith?
Yeah, I get that question asked a lot. And because a lot of people recognize me from the movie Black Hawk Down. Actually, I wasn't in the movie. There's an actor who plays me in the movie. When guys and gals are considering joining the military and they have a very strong faith, a lot of them will ask me the very question that you just asked. And I tell them, look, my experience is a little bit different. I was a guy who was a very committed Christian, but also loved being a warrior. So I was one of those door kickers that just loved my job and happened to love Jesus at the same time. So by the time I became a chaplain and now a pastor, I never felt this conflict between serving the country and following my faith. I've never felt that conflict. Now, I have talked to lots of people that have. I've just never felt it. But I also want to compliment you, Alec. You used the right word. The Bible doesn't strictly command people not to kill. In fact, it recognizes a big difference between murder and killing. And what I typically do if I have a few moments with people is start to describe the way the Bible approaches the difference between murder and killing.
Yeah, very cool. And you mentioned there too, obviously the film Black Hawk Down. I've had Mike Durant on the podcast here, and I've had Matt Eversman on the show as well.
Awesome.
And I know you had Brian Van Holt, I believe, is the guy that played you. Now
Yeah.
Matt talked about watching it for the first time with his daughter, when the first time she saw it. Did you have a moment where your kids, did you sit and watch the film with the kids, and what was kind of their response to watching the film?
Well, they never really sat down and watched the movie with me. I've been on the road doing some speaking events where the audience saw clips from Black Hawk Down, but I don't think I've sat down and watched it with any of my children. So I know my youngest daughter hasn't seen it at all. I don't know if the rest of my children have seen the whole movie in its entirety, but they've seen certain parts of the movie over and over again. And for them, it's not some far off movie. That's just my dad. He's no hero. He's no superstar. It's just my dad.
Yeah, very cool. And now, do you still stay in touch with a lot of the guys from the Black Hawk Down, from the Battle in Mogadishu?
Yeah, I get a chance to see him from time to time. I saw Mike Durant not long ago. Me and Matt Eversman were doing a thing together not long ago. So yeah, I still get a chance to see him.
Awesome. And switching it back into you as a dad here for a minute, Jeff, what type of disciplinarian? Now, obviously, Army Ranger, we know that your physicality, tough, discipline, but what type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
Definitely different. I didn't really have a father figure in my life for most of the time that I was growing up. So when we started having children, I didn't really know what to do, and I stumbled through it, man. And I made a lot of mistakes. I just want to admit that. It was figuring it out as you go along, kind of OJT. That's not the OJT that you want to do, but I, figured it out as I went. And I recognized these are my children and not soldiers in the Army. So I didn't try to treat them like soldiers when they grew up. I tried to treat them like children, like this precious gift that God has given to me. But that said, we set some rules in our house, and we didn't set a lot of rules, but the rules were non-negotiable. Don't even ask if you can, if you can get around the rules, because there is no circumstance on planet Earth where you will ever be able to get around this rule. So just follow the rules and we're okay. And I'm happy to say that's basically how most of my children, that's the way most of my children live. They respected the rules and followed the rules.
Very cool. And now I'm about to come. My oldest is only 15. My youngest is my only girl. She's 7. I'm about to hit all these stages with when dating starts to come into the scene here. And I'm grateful that I have time, and I'll have 3 boys to go through this before it gets to my daughter. But you've been there now. Your kids are older. What kind of advice, or how did you kind of handle it when your kids became old enough to start dating?
When my sons were old enough to start dating, I reminded them, hey, you should take the lead in this relationship. So you set the tone for how the relationship is going to go, not her. And by that, I mean, you protect this woman, you treat her with respect, you respect her boundaries and her body, and you don't take advantage of her. For my daughters, and I had 3 sons first, like you, and then 2 girls later. Because my daughters came along later, we had the 2-meter rule, which was, hey, make sure that no boys get within 6 feet of your daughter without you personally approving of it, or your mom and dad approving of it. That was kind of a little joke at the dinner table. You protect your sister from those players out there that just want to take advantage of her body. But secondly, the rule in our house was because you love your brother or because you love your sister, we want you to make sure. I want to know that the rest of your siblings are comfortable with a relationship before you start to get serious with somebody. And oftentimes, a boyfriend or a girlfriend can fool the parents, but you're not going to fool the brothers or sisters. So I tell them, hey, I want you to go sniff out these guys that are interested in your sisters. Or, hey, ladies, I want you to go sniff out the girls that are interested in your brothers and come back and let me know what you think about them.
Yeah, I'm praying to have the similar circumstances here with my 3 boys and my daughter. And it sounds like you had your daughters practicing social distancing before it was cool.
That's
So
exactly right. I had their boyfriends practicing social distancing.
Right. Good stuff. And what's coming up next for you here? What kind of goals or plans do you have here for yourself for the future?
Yeah, well, I now have 2 of the 5 children married. They have 4 children of their own. It's been beautiful to see grandchildren, but Alec, I'll tell you something that nobody ever told me, and I wish I would have known this. What's best about being a grandparent is watching my son become a dad, watching my daughter become a mom, and seeing just how much this changes them. And I've been sitting back watching this. They've been parents now for a few years, sitting back watching the kind of men and women they're becoming as parents and thinking, wow, this is awesome. Just watching how much it's changing their world. It's like all of that hard work of becoming a parent, it's all paying off when your children became parents.
Yeah, really great stuff, Jeff. Last thing I want to hit you with here, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening?
Yeah, for new dads or moms, for parents that have a baby on the way but have never really, started being a parent yet, my advice is, hey, you're gonna mess up, and don't be afraid to admit, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Don't be afraid to tell your child, I'm sorry, I messed up along the way, because there has never been a perfect parent on planet Earth, and since I'm not a perfect parent, you didn't have perfect parents, chances are when that baby comes into your house, you're not going to be a perfect parent either. And that means you need to be able to look them in the eyes and say, look, I messed up here, and can you forgive me? It's very powerful to hear that from a parent. Secondly, it's okay to remind your child, hey, I'm still figuring this out. I'm a new parent. And I'm still figuring it out. And every stage of life, as they get a little bit older, I'm trying to figure that stage out. Don't know what I'm doing. Getting lots of advice, but still don't know what I'm doing. And I think it's good to remember that personally, but it might be good just to remind your children, hey, I'm trying to figure this thing out as we go.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Jeff Struecker, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, buddy.